The sky over British Columbia's interior foothills rippled with pale autumn light as three men rumbled down an old Forestry Service road in a mud-smeared pickup truck. Pockets of mist clung to the trees, wrapping the dense firs in a quiet shroud that smelled of cedar and damp soil. The forest was remote here, cut off from cell towers and far beyond the reach of weekend hikers. This was hunting country, raw and rarely visited. "Can't believe you still keep this place running," said Tom, peering through the windshield as the truck bounced over another rut. He was wiry and clean-shaven, always the skeptic among them. His friend Nathan, broad-shouldered, bearded, the unofficial leader of the trio, grinned behind the wheel. "My granddad built that cabin 40 years ago. It stood through storms, wildfires, and more bear sightings than you'd care to count." In the back seat, Jesse chuckled, his camo hat pulled low. "Just as long as it's got beer, heat, and a place to hang our kills." They were old friends from school, now pushing mid-40s, drawn back together by the call of wild land and the silent promise of elk and moose in the hills. The hunting trip was supposed to be about relaxation, meat, and memories. None of them knew yet that something far older than the cabin was watching them, something not quite of this earth. They arrived by dusk. The cabin sat in a sunken grove at the base of a granite bluff, partly hidden by thick evergreens. It looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. Moss on the roof, an axe buried in a stump, and firewood stacked high like miniature walls of defense. "Still gives me chills," Jesse muttered as he stepped out, scanning the tree line. "It's too damn quiet out here." Nathan pulled a tarp off the cabin's generator and motioned toward the edge of the woods. "Help me haul the water tank, will you? We'll need it full before dark." The three of them worked quickly, laughter echoing through the fading light. But none of them noticed the dark figure standing motionless behind the tree line just beyond the ridge. Not yet. The morning came slow and colorless. Pale gray light seeped through the trees like smoke, the kind of cold dawn that made breath linger and silence stretch long between sounds. A light frost coated the ground, and the forest felt older somehow, like it had exhaled something heavy in the night. Nathan stood on the porch with a steaming enamel mug, scanning the tree line. "You guys hear anything weird last night?" he asked. Tom stepped out behind him, rubbing his arms. "Just the wind, and a couple branches cracking. Could have been deer." Jesse joined them, blinking the sleep from his eyes. "Nope, slept like a log." But Nathan frowned. Something was off. "Woke up around 3. I swear I heard breathing. Heavy, close." They all paused. The forest around them was quiet, but not peacefully so. It was that charged kind of quiet that made prey animals freeze in place and hunters grip their rifles tighter. Nathan took a few steps into the clearing, near the woodpile. Then he saw them. "Hey, come look at this." The others joined him, eyes drawn to the soft, damp ground behind the cabin. There, pressed into the gray loam, were a series of massive footprints. Not moose, not bear, not human. "Jesus," Jesse whispered, crouching low. "That's gotta be, 18 inches? "Look at the stride," Nathan muttered. Whatever this was, it wasn't stumbling. It was walking clean and upright. "And barefoot," Tom added. "This deep in the woods? At night? No way. No way that's a person." The prints led toward the thick trees, where they suddenly vanished into a patch of older pine needles. No drag marks, no snapped branches, just gone. "Could be a prank," Jesse offered, though his voice was hollow. Could be one of those hoaxers. Bigfoot guys with fake feet." Nathan shook his head. "Who the hell would come 20 kilometers off-grid in the middle of the night to do that?" They followed the prints for another 50 yards before losing them entirely. Around them, the forest seemed to lean in closer. Even the wind felt like it was watching. That's when they found the clawed tree. A Douglas fir, maybe 60 years old, had a series of deep parallel gouges down its trunk. 5 distinct lines, each curved like a massive hand had scraped it. Fresh sap oozed from the wounds. "This ain't a prank," Nathan said quietly. "Something was here last night. Something real." No one spoke after that. They just turned back toward the cabin, rifles slung tighter to their shoulders, eyes sweeping every shadow like it might blink back. The fog came fast, unnatural in its speed. One moment, the hunters could see the bluff behind the cabin and the long slope of evergreens that led toward the creek. The next, everything was pale and closed in, like the world had forgotten to render beyond 20 feet. Tom was the first to speak what they all were thinking. "This ain't normal fog." Jesse looked up from the fire pit he'd been tending, the flames now flickering strangely, dancing sideways. "You feel that?" he asked. "The air's wrong, static, like just before a lightning strike." Nathan was at the tree line again, his rifle raised. "Get inside." They did, not because they were scared, at least not out loud, but because something about that fog didn't sit right. It didn't move like weather. It moved like intention. Inside the cabin, the air was quiet except for the occasional creak of the roof and the slow hiss of the wood stove. Nathan peeked out the front window and froze. "Something's out there." Jesse moved beside him. "Where?" Nathan pointed. "Past the clearing, between those two pines. I saw movement." Tom lifted the old binoculars that hung by the door. "Let me see." A pause. Then, "I see it too." They passed the binoculars in silence. Whatever it was, it stood still. Tall, slightly hunched, covered in shaggy hair, but not in the disheveled way of a bear. There was symmetry to it. Intent. The figure didn't shift like a lost animal. It watched. "I think it's him," Jesse whispered. "The thing that left those prints." Then, with no warning, it moved. Not fast, but deliberate. One step, then another. Then it simply melted into the fog. They burst out of the cabin with rifles ready, but by the time they reached the spot, it was already gone. The ground was undisturbed. No tracks, no broken branches, no prints like the day before. Just a growing sense that something was drawing closer, something testing the edge of their reality. The fog began to pull back, as if satisfied. Back at the cabin, Nathan found something else. On the porch rail, right where he'd rested his coffee cup that morning, was a single gray hair, long, coarse, and curled at the end. And beneath it, etched faintly into the wood, was a symbol. 3 crescents forming a spiral. "Did one of you carve this?" he asked. They shook their heads. None of them spoke much the rest of the afternoon. They cleaned their rifles. They pretended not to be scared. But each of them, deep down, knew. They hadn't just seen an animal. They had been seen by something else. The forest remained still for most of the day. Not calm, just quiet in that suffocating way that builds pressure in the chest. The kind of silence that suggests the world is holding its breath, waiting. By mid-afternoon, Jesse couldn't take it anymore. "I need to move," he said. "We need to do something. We can't just sit here and stare at the trees." Nathan nodded. "Let's do a sweep. Stick together, just a loop. Maybe we find more tracks, or maybe we flush it out." "I'm not sure we want to flush it out," Tom said under his breath, checking his rifle anyway. The 3 of them moved eastward through the tree line, past the clawed fir and into the deeper forest where the canopy turned the sky into a shifting quilt of shadow. The air grew thicker there, moist and warm, and birdsong remained strangely absent. Only the occasional drip of dew from leaf to moss punctuated the hush. Then the sound came. It wasn't a howl. Not exactly. It was deeper, like a long, resonating vocalization that started low and ended in something close to a human voice. But not. A warbled, vibrating call that echoed across the trees like a sonar pulse. All 3 men froze. "That wasn't an elk," Jesse whispered. The sound came again, but from a different direction. Then again, closer, higher. Up in there, Nathan said, scanning the canopy. At first they saw only leaves. Then, barely visible in the tangled limbs of a massive cedar, something shifted. A dark shape moved through the upper boughs, not swinging, not climbing, gliding, as if it didn't quite obey gravity. Tom raised his scope. I can't get a fix. It's too fast. Nathan lowered his rifle. I don't think it wants to be seen. Just heard. The sound came one final time, louder now, impossibly close, followed by a rush of wind through the branches, like a breath exhaled directly overhead. Then, silence again. They stood there a long time, unmoving, until a branch cracked somewhere behind them. They spun, rifles raised, but it was only a bird. The first bird they'd seen all day. A lone raven, perched on a low branch, watching them. Its feathers shimmered with oil-like hues, and it cocked its head in a way that felt almost intelligent. What the hell is going on out here? Jesse whispered. No one answered. By the next morning, the tension had stretched them thin. Sleep had been broken and shallow, filled with half-heard noises and the sense of something moving just outside the cabin. The air had that strange electric weight again, like the calm before a storm, though the sky remained dry and pale. They decided to make another loop through the woods, this time cutting farther west toward a dense ravine Nathan remembered from childhood. It was a place he hadn't been in years, thick with moss and ferns, where the ground felt spongy and the canopy blocked nearly all light. Jesse led this time, rifle slung low. Tom followed with his usual cynicism muted by unease. Nathan brought up the rear, his eyes constantly scanning. That's when they heard it. Crack. A single snap of a branch ahead. Then silence. Then another. Closer. Jesse held up a hand, freezing them in place. Through the foliage, just beyond a cluster of rotting logs, something moved. They couldn't see it clearly. A tall, shifting shape, covered in coarse brown-black fur. It walked on two legs, slowly, methodically, its head turning as if scanning the forest. Then it stopped, just 40 feet away. Tom whispered, "That's it. Same one from the fog." "Wait," Nathan hissed. "It's not doing anything. Don't—" Too late. A crack of rifle fire split the air. Jesse had pulled the trigger. The creature staggered, spinning in a slow, awful motion. Its body hit the ground with a sound none of them would forget. Heavy, final. For several seconds, no one moved. "What did you do?" Nathan breathed. I panicked," Jesse stammered. "It looked like it was coming toward us. I thought—" "Shut up. Just shut up." They approached slowly, hearts hammering. As they reached the body, the world seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't an animal. Not quite. The thing lying on the forest floor looked like a Bigfoot, yes, but something about it was off. Too clean, too symmetrical. No wounds, no blood, no broken limbs. Its eyes were closed, but its mouth was slightly parted, revealing small, flat teeth. Its skin beneath the hair, what they could see of it, had a faint shimmer, almost synthetic. And worse, it was breathing. Barely. Jesse dropped to his knees beside it, stunned. "I didn't kill it?" "No," Nathan said, stepping back. "But we need to get it out of here, now." "Back to the cabin?" Tom asked, incredulous. "Yeah," Nathan said, "and we need to figure out what the hell we just shot." Because in that moment, all of them knew. It wasn't just a creature. It was something more. They hauled the creature through the woods using a makeshift stretcher fashioned from tarps and thick branches. It took all three of them, straining, sweating, hearts pounding, to drag its tremendous weight the 2 kilometers back to the cabin. By the time they got there, the light had turned amber, bleeding through the tree trunks like warning flares. Inside, They laid the being on a stack of bedrolls in the corner, cleared the table, and sat in silence for a long time, watching it breathe. "What is it?" Tom asked finally, barely above a whisper. No one answered. Jesse sat hunched over, guilt etched into every line of his face. Nathan finally stood and approached the creature again. He crouched beside it, squinting at the strange shimmer under its fur, like its skin was coated in something not quite natural. He slowly reached forward and pressed 2 fingers against its neck. "It's warm," he said, "but not like us. It's like standing next to a generator." The creature stirred. A low exhale escaped its mouth, a sound more like steam than breath. Its eyes fluttered briefly. They all jumped back, but it didn't rise. Not yet. "I think it's sedated," Nathan said. "That makes no sense," Jesse murmured. "We didn't sedate it." Tom exhaled sharply. "Maybe it sedated itself, like an automatic response to trauma?" Jesse looked up, eyes wild. "Are you listening to yourselves? We shot Bigfoot. It's lying on our floor, and you're saying it's self-sedated?" Nathan didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a pocket knife from his belt and carefully cut away a small patch of fur. Underneath was not skin. Or rather, not just skin. It was something layered, organic, but textured like polymer. And beneath that, a faint network of lines, luminous, almost circuitry. "What the hell?" Tom muttered. They stared in silence. Then the lights flickered. Every bulb in the cabin dimmed at once, then came back, then dimmed again. The radio popped on without being touched. A burst of static. Then a low tone, like a transmission slowed to the brink of silence. The creature's eyes opened. Not wide, just enough. Its pupils were vertical. Not animal, not human. Something else. It locked eyes with Nathan, and then it spoke. Not in words, but in a soft thrum. A feeling that entered their minds without sound. "You don't know what you've done." The message lingered in the cabin like a weight. "You don't know what you've done." The creature's eyes closed again, not from pain, but from something else. As if the act of speaking, if it could even be called that, required more than just effort. As if it had reached across some invisible threshold to touch their minds. Outside, the forest groaned. The wind picked up unnaturally, and then the sound, high-pitched at first, like a distant engine, but layered, mechanical, melodic, resonant. "What is that?" Tom said, his voice tight with fear. Nathan was already at the window. "No lights, just sound. Wait, no, I see movement, through the trees." Jesse slowly stood, rifle in hand, though his body seemed frozen between the impulse to fight and the instinct to run. "Tell me we're not about to be abducted." They stepped outside into a cold, electric wind. The moon had vanished behind cloud or smoke, or maybe something else entirely, but the forest ahead of them was bathed in a soft, shifting glow, not from above, but from between the trees. And then they came. Figures. 3 of them. Tall, nearly 7 feet, but lean and otherworldly. Their skin shimmered in layered hues, like polished metal with depth. Their faces were elongated, their eyes wide, black, reflective. They did not glow. They absorbed the light. Nathan's voice cracked. "Are those grays?" "No," Jesse whispered. "Something else." The 3 figures moved silently across the moss, parting the air without touching it. When they stopped at the edge of the clearing, the sound ceased entirely. The forest fell silent again. Then the middle one stepped forward, raising a hand, not in threat, but in a slow, open gesture of peace. Nathan's head filled with words, not spoken, given. "We did not intend contact. The disguise failed. Your fear is understandable." His lips parted. You disguise yourselves as Bigfoot? The being's head tilted slightly. For reconnaissance only. This form evokes avoidance. It keeps us safe. Tom let out a strangled laugh. We shot a damn alien Bigfoot. He is not dead, but he cannot stay here. Nathan pointed at the cabin. He's still unconscious. What do you want us to do? Release him. We will take him, and we will leave. What if we say no? Jesse asked aloud, louder than he intended. For a moment, none of the beings moved. Then the light around them shifted, compressing, tightening. The air thickened like water. Jesse dropped to one knee, gasping. Tom staggered. Nathan felt his thoughts slowing, as if time itself had warped. And then it stopped. We mean no harm, but you are not in control of this exchange. Nathan looked toward the cabin, then back. Will he live? The being paused. Then, yes, but only if he returns now. Nathan nodded slowly. Then take him. The forest was absolutely still, save for the flicker of firelight inside the cabin. But in the clearing, the air shimmered, as if reality itself were being gently peeled back. The aliens moved without sound, yet with urgency. One approached the unconscious form of the disguised being and knelt beside it. From the folds of its skin, or perhaps from a compartment hidden within, came a small, glowing device shaped like a spiral shell. It hovered above the being's chest and pulsed in time with its slow, shallow breath. Tom and Jesse stood behind Nathan, both speechless, locked in the tension between awe and unease. Is it going to live? Jesse asked again, more to himself than anyone. The nearest alien turned its head. Whether in response or coincidence, they couldn't be sure. Then, the light in the trees changed. From high above, through the mist and canopy, a shaft of light descended. Not harsh like a spotlight, nor warm like the sun. It was neutral, silver-hued, smooth. It hummed not with sound, but with intention. The three aliens raised their hands in unison. The being on the ground lifted, weightless, limbs limp, fur glistening in the silver beam. As it rose, the artificial Bigfoot form flickered briefly, revealing beneath it a humanoid shape covered in patterned light. Angular joints, elongated fingers, large, mirrored eyes. And then, back to fur again, like a glitch in a disguise meant for another world. The moment it reached the midpoint of the beam, a rush of static washed over the clearing. Everyone's skin tingled, and the scent of ozone filled the air. Jesse whispered, "Jesus." Then it was gone. No noise, no spaceship, no wind. The beam simply shut off, like a projector flicked off at the end of a film. The aliens remained for a few heartbeats longer, their black eyes watching the hunters with stillness that felt ancient. Then they too stepped backward, into the trees, and disappeared like smoke into wind. Nathan exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. "Did that just happen?" Tom asked quietly. "I don't think we're ever going to talk about this again," Nathan replied. Jesse, eyes wide and wet, nodded. No one would believe us anyway. But deep in the moss, beneath their feet, a spiral symbol, 3 crescents nested into each other, glowed faintly, then vanished like a fading ember. 2 days later, the silence still hadn't lifted. The 3 hunters sat around the cabin's wood stove in a triangle of unspoken tension. The creature was gone. The aliens were gone. But what lingered was harder to erase. Jesse finally broke the silence. "We have to tell someone." "Tell them what?" Tom snapped. "That we shot Bigfoot and aliens came to take him back? You want to be on a government watch list, a podcast, or worse, locked up?" Nathan didn't look up from the fire. He hadn't said much since the night they watched the silver beam fade into the trees. "They already know," he said finally. Tom frowned. "What?" "I think they've known about this for a long time. The government, or someone above them. Whatever that was, it didn't feel like first contact. It felt like something practiced, controlled. Jesse leaned back, exhaling hard. So, we do nothing? Nathan looked up. His face was different now, calmer, but older somehow. We write it down, every detail. We don't post it. We don't spread it. We just keep it safe. Someone will need it, someday. Tom shook his head. This is insane. Nathan turned to him. What would you call it then? They left 2 days later, each returning to their separate lives. But the world had changed. Or maybe it had always been this way, and only now had the veil thinned enough to see through. Back in his apartment, Nathan began typing. He kept the original files offline. He stored them on a solid-state drive hidden behind the drywall. He didn't give the document a name, just 3 symbols on the cover page, a spiral of crescent moons. He sent Jesse and Tom copies on encrypted USB drives. Neither replied. But a week later, Nathan's laptop powered itself on in the middle of the night. The screen was blank. Then slowly, line by line, text appeared in a language he didn't recognize. Geometric, angular. And when it stopped, a new phrase replaced it. He is alive. He remembers. So do we. The screen went dark, and somewhere, deep in a forest that doesn't appear on satellite maps, something walked upright between the trees, barefoot, massive, and utterly silent. Weeks passed, then months. Nathan told no one. The encrypted document stayed hidden, unread. The others had gone silent. Jesse stopped replying altogether, and Tom's phone had been disconnected. But Nathan kept noticing things. The same black SUV parked across the street for 3 nights in a row. An unfamiliar humming on his landline before every call. Emails that vanished from his drafts before he could send them. One evening, his power flickered 3 times in succession, exactly the same number of crescents etched onto the old cabin porch. He took it as a message. So, he left. He drove north, deep into the Kootenays, where cell signals died and maps lost their grip. Somewhere near an old fire road, long since eroded, he parked his truck and hiked with only a backpack and the encrypted drive. 3 nights into the bush, he found it again. The clearing. But the cabin was gone. In its place, a shallow depression in the moss, perfectly circular, ringed with stones so smooth they looked poured rather than carved. And at the center, a strange metallic panel, half buried. He brushed it off. Embedded in the center was the symbol, the spiral of crescents. He placed the USB drive into his jacket pocket, pulled out a notepad, and began sketching the formation. Then the humming began. It was low, directionless. The trees themselves seemed to vibrate. Nathan stepped back. The panel's surface shifted, folding inward with impossible geometry. A screen flickered on, though there was no power source, no button. It displayed a map, not of Earth, but of star systems, dozens of them, and among them, a blinking dot, Earth. Above the dot, a phrase formed in glyphs, then translated. Protocol echo engaged, witness registered. He stumbled back in disbelief. The glyphs shifted again. You are the signal now. The screen went black. Nathan stood in the darkening woods, alone, but no longer just a man. Something had passed through him. He felt it. A memory that wasn't his. A thought that didn't belong to him. A future unfolding through him. He didn't understand it all, but he understood this. They weren't finished. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He wandered the perimeter of the old clearing, unable to shake the sense that something had been implanted. Not a device, not a chip, but something deeper. He couldn't remember it, and yet he could feel it. A memory that wasn't his. It started with flashes, sensations more than visuals. the press of weightless boots against spongy moss, a towering wall of obsidian, glyphs sliding across its surface like insects swimming upstream. Then the auditory echoes arrived. Not voices. Vibrations. As if a thought could be felt rather than heard. And one phrase repeated again and again. You are not the first. By morning, Nathan was back at his small cabin in Nelson, British Columbia. He closed the blinds. He disconnected the internet. He pulled a journal from the floorboard. The memories came faster now. Whole scenes, vivid and tactile. An enormous chamber beneath ice. Pillars of light growing from the floor like crystal trees. A group of beings, not the same as the visitors. Taller, more angular. Their bodies wrapped in a living membrane that pulsed and shifted like water around a stone. They walked slowly through corridors lined with pods. Inside each pod, forms. Some human, some not. And Nathan somehow had been there. He could see it through someone else's eyes. He could feel the pressure of the suit, the dim hum of alien atmosphere recycling through his lungs. He was watching a memory stored in a brain that no longer existed. Or rather, a consciousness that had once passed through the being they had shot in the woods. A relay. Not a scout, not a soldier. A witness. That being had recorded thousands of years of quiet observation. Earth's myths, anomalies, timelines fractured and repaired again. And Nathan was now a carrier of it. Echoes of the entire observation cycle, echo protocol, were burned into his subconscious. And there was one thing more. The glyphs in his vision shifted again, this time into a diagram. A world above the world. An artificial ring hidden in low orbit, visible only during auroral distortion. A station, ancient, silent, alive. It watched the watchers, and something had just awakened it. Nathan closed the journal, his hands trembling. This was never about Bigfoot. It was about the observers behind the disguise, and now they were watching him. It took Nathan weeks to locate it. He cross-referenced atmospheric distortion records, analyzed orbital trajectories from amateur astronomers, and pored over declassified NORAD data that had long since fallen into obscurity. What he found wasn't a satellite. It was something else. A large, silent object in low Earth orbit, never transmitting, never reflecting standard radar pings. But on rare occasions, when auroral interference peaked across northern Canada, it became visible for less than a second. A ring, vast and dark, eclipsing the stars with unnatural symmetry. He called it the world above the world. Using a modified amateur telescope and a timing algorithm based on aurora cycles, Nathan eventually saw it for himself. 1 second of clarity, a perfect circle, rotating slowly, segmented, like petals of an ancient machine folded inward. Not human, and not new. It had been there, he now believed, before satellites, before aircraft, maybe even before civilization. And it was waking up. That night, Nathan dreamed. He stood on the surface of the ring. The stars hung still in the black void, closer than they should have been. Beneath his feet, the metal hummed, not as machinery, but as language. Vibrating patterns of memory and possibility. The ring spoke through sensation, through intention. Images flooded his mind. Earth, covered in luminous grid lines like a forgotten circuit board. Massive beings, neither flesh nor machine, descending toward an ancient Earth, weaving cloaks of invisibility across mountain ranges. The moon, not natural, not hollow, but linked. A resonance chamber amplifying signals from the ring to below. And then he saw them. Not the Watchers, but the ones who built the Watchers. They didn't travel by ship. They traveled by awakening what already was. The ring was one of many, and it had chosen to observe through him now. When Nathan awoke, he couldn't remember how he'd gotten outside. He stood barefoot in the snow, arms extended toward the stars. And above him, faint but distinct, the ring blinked once, acknowledged. Nathan stopped calling them aliens. That word, alien, implied they were foreign, external, visitors from somewhere else. But what he saw in his dreams and in his waking visions told a different story. They were not from elsewhere. They were from before. He began calling them the architects. They did not travel. They did not invade. They were already here, woven into the substrate of reality, buried beneath layers of myth, matter, and memory. The Bigfoot-like recon beings were only the surface layer, mimetic interfaces. They walked among trees and shadows because that's where the human eye was trained to overlook. But the architects worked deeper. They did not observe with sight. They recorded with causality. In one of Nathan's most vivid visions, he stood at the foot of a towering monolith carved into the wall of a ravine. It was smooth and black, not of stone, not of metal. When touched, it shimmered, not visibly, but inwardly, like a chord vibrating against the soul. There, he met one of them. It had no true shape. It was all angles and suggestion. Its body bent without joints. Its face was a contradiction, both there and not, shifting through familiar and alien geometry. It did not speak. It showed. Nathan saw the rise of Earth's ancient sites, Göbekli Tepe, Baalbek, the Giza Plateau, not as human invention, but as reactivations. These sites had been built atop architectural beacons, coded into Earth's crust long before humanity walked upright. A deep language of geometry and mineral resonance. He saw glyphs burned into the bedrock beneath Stonehenge, never discovered. He saw a chamber beneath Mount Kailash pulsing in silence. He saw the spiral, always the spiral, etched into every interface like a cosmic signature. The architects were not here to rule. They were not here to save. They were testing continuity, making sure the pattern could replicate through consciousness, life to life, body to body, dream to waking. Nathan was simply one of thousands. He understood now. The disguise, the beam, the spiral shell. Each moment had been a test, a handshake protocol, a signal query. And Earth had answered. It was ready. Nathan couldn't tell if he was dreaming anymore. Every night he entered a space between sleep and consciousness, a liminal corridor made of spirals and soft pulses of color. Each time he entered, the structure felt more real than the waking world. Tactile, measured, true. In this space, he was shown the seed, not a literal seed, but a concept, a blueprint, hidden inside the spiral itself. A fractal encoded across all scales, from DNA to galactic orbit, from mycelium networks to city grids. The spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was an equation, a self-replicating logic system designed by the architects. Wherever it embedded, life emerged. Intelligence followed. Memory crystallized. And when the pattern reached critical density, the seed activated. Not with sound or flame, but with conscious recognition. The seed was now inside Nathan, not physically, not even biologically, but psycho-spiritually, bound to his awareness, turning his dreams into data streams and his thoughts into signals. He began drawing symbols he didn't understand, maps of places he'd never been, names in languages he'd never spoken, and all the while, the spiral kept appearing, in bark, in rivers, in clouds. Once, carved into his kitchen table in the morning despite never having touched it. He was changing, or rather, returning. One morning, while standing barefoot in a patch of frost behind his cabin, he saw something remarkable. In the sky, a pattern, not a ship, not a beam, a spiral of auroral energy, blooming like a slow flower above the treetops. It moved with elegance, deliberate and slow, rotating like a signal waiting for acknowledgement. The seed had taken root, and the spiral was calling others. Somewhere out there, he knew, more witnesses were awakening. The spiral was not a warning. It was an invitation. It began quietly. A letter left on Nathan's doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, aged and creased. On it, a spiral, hand-drawn, identical to the one burned into his memory. Below it, in careful script, I saw it too. Within a week, more messages arrived. An email from a retired military officer in Alaska. A charcoal sketch mailed from southern Chile. A child's notebook page found folded into a second-hand book, filled with spirals and notes about the watchers in the sky. Nathan realized the truth. He wasn't the only one who had been marked. The spiral was a broadcast, not just to him but to others tuned to receive it. He began compiling the messages, pinning maps, creating links. A woman in Finland had recorded dreams of beings made of shifting light since 1983. A man in Mongolia described a forest creature bleeding silver and vanishing in a beam of wind. A radio technician in Nunavut once picked up a transmission that translated to, "Echo complete. Await signal." They were all different, and all the same. Nathan called them the other witnesses. Some were aware. Most were fractured, haunted, confused, unable to distinguish memory from revelation. But all of them had seen the spiral in some form, etched in frost, carved in bone, folded into coincidence. One night, the ring appeared again, but not to him. This time it was seen by a pilot flying a cargo route over the Arctic Circle. He reported a silent halo with interior structures resembling an eye. When he landed, he was met by men in suits. The footage vanished, but not before Nathan had received a copy. The spiral was accelerating. Each witness was a node, a point in the pattern. Not chosen at random, but sequenced, placed to prepare the next evolution. Not a takeover, not a rescue, a handover. The architects were not returning. They were activating what they had seeded. Earth wasn't being visited. It was awakening. And as Nathan stood beneath the stars for the final time in this story, spiral auroras swirling overhead, he no longer felt alone. All across the planet, others were stepping outside, eyes lifted skyward, whispering the same silent phrase, "I remember."